The stars burned cold and silent in the void as Commander watched the small human ship drift helplessly before her fleet. Smoke poured from its engines. Its shields had failed after the first volley. The tiny vessel looked like a wounded animal floating in the darkness of space, waiting to die. Felt a deep satisfaction in her chest. This was what the Dominion did best. They hunted. They conquered. They made lesser species tremble at the mere mention of their name. For 3,000 years, her people had spread across the galaxy like a plague of scales and claws, and no one had ever stopped them. She stood on the bridge of her warship, the Endless Night, and studied the human vessel through the viewing screen. It was a research ship, the intelligence reports said. No weapons worth mentioning. A crew of maybe 20 soft, fragile creatures who had wandered too far from the safety of their home systems. "Prepare a boarding party," she ordered. Her voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "I want prisoners, at least one alive for questioning." Her second-in-command, Al, bowed his massive head. Like all, he stood over 8 feet tall. His body was covered in scales that shifted color in the light, moving from deep green to black depending on his mood. 4 arms hung at his sides, each one ending in fingers tipped with claws that could tear through metal. His jaw was filled with teeth designed for one purpose only: to kill and to eat. They had evolved on a jungle world called Prime. For millions of years, they had been the ultimate predators of their planet. Nothing had hunted them. Nothing had threatened them. They had clawed their way to intelligence with blood under their nails and meat between their teeth. When they finally built ships and reached for the stars, they brought their predator instincts with them. 17 species had fallen to the Dominion. Most of them surrendered after seeing the war fleets arrive in their skis. The others learned quickly that resistance only made the killing last longer. Had personally overseen the conquest of 3 worlds. She knew how prey behaved. She knew the look of fear in 100 different types of eyes. She knew how spirits broke long before bodies did. The boarding party returned within the hour. Most of the human crew had died when their ship was disabled. The soldiers had found only a handful of survivors hiding in the lower decks. They had killed all but one. The prisoner was brought to the bridge in chains, turned from the viewing screen to examine him. He was disappointing. The human was small, barely reaching her chest in height. His skin was soft and pale, without scales or armor of any kind. His hands had no claws. His teeth, when she caught a glimpse of them, were flat and dull. He had no natural weapons at all. He looked like something that should have been eaten long before it ever evolved intelligence. His name was, according to the identification they had found on him, a scientist who studied alien life. He was perhaps 40 years old by human counting, with gray starting to show in his dark hair. He wore simple clothes that had been torn during his capture. Circled him slowly. This was the ritual. This was how they broke their prisoners. They showed them exactly what they faced. They let the prey see the predator in all its terrible glory. She let him see her full height. She flexed her 4 arms so he could observe the muscles moving beneath her scales. She opened her jaw slightly, revealing rows of teeth that could crush bone like dry wood. She let him smell her breath, the musk of a carnivore, the scent of a creature that ate meat and enjoyed it. Her crew watched in silence. They had seen this many times before. They knew what came next. The human would tremble. The human would cry or beg or try to bargain. The human spirit would crack like thin ice, and then the questioning would begin. But did none of these things. He simply watched her. His breathing remained steady and calm. His eyes tracked her movement, but there was no panic in them. He did not shake. He did not sweat. He did not try to pull away from her when she leaned close. Felt a small flicker of confusion. Perhaps the human was in shock. Perhaps his mind had already broken, leaving him empty inside. She grabbed his jaw with one clawed hand, forcing him to look directly into her predator eyes. "Do you know what we are?" she growled. He said. His voice was calm, almost polite. dominant species of the Dominion, reptilian bipeds, apex predators. You've conquered 17 known species through military force and psychological warfare. Released his jaw, he knew exactly what she was. He understood his situation, and yet he showed no fear. "Your ship's database," she said, leaning even closer. "You will tell us the location of Earth's defense stations. You will give us the codes to your communication networks. You will tell us everything we wish to know about your species' military capabilities." Looked at her for a long moment. Then he tilted his head slightly, like a curious animal studying something interesting. "No," he said, "I don't think I will." The bridge went silent. His crew exchanged glances of disbelief. No prisoner had ever refused so quickly. No prey had ever spoken to a commander with such casual dismissal. Felt something she had not felt in many years. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, like a cold wind touching the back of her neck. It was uncertainty. She straightened to her full height and looked down at the small, soft, clawless human standing in chains before her. He looked back at her with eyes that held no terror, no desperation, no pleading. He looked at her the way one might look at weather. Interesting, perhaps, worth nodding, but not frightening. "Take him to the holding cells," ordered. "We will begin proper interrogation tomorrow." As the guards dragged away, he glanced back over his shoulder at her, and he smiled. It was a small smile, almost friendly. That smile stayed with long after the human was gone. She stood on her bridge, surrounded by her crew of predators, aboard a ship designed for conquest and killing. And for the first time in her long career, she wondered if she had captured prey or something else entirely. 3 days passed aboard the endless night, and Commander grew more troubled with each one. She had broken prisoners from 17 different species. She knew every technique her people had developed over centuries of conquest. She knew how to use darkness and light, sound and silence, pain and the promise of pain. She knew how to make creatures tell her things they would rather die than reveal. None of it worked on. On the first day, she had him brought to an interrogation chamber. The room was designed to terrify. The walls were lined with tools meant for cutting and breaking. The floor was stained with old blood that her crew never bothered to clean. The air smelled of fear and death. Looked around the chamber with mild interest, like a tourist visiting a museum. "Interesting design," he said. "Very atmospheric." Showed him recordings. She made him watch what happened to species that the Dominion. She showed him cities burning. She showed him prisoners being eaten alive. She showed him the complete destruction of civilizations that had tried to resist. Watched everything without expression. When the recordings ended, he simply nodded and said, "Efficient." On the second day, she left him in complete darkness. The isolation chamber was perfectly black and perfectly silent. Other prisoners had gone mad within hours, screaming and clawing at the walls, begging for light and sound and any kind of contact. When the guards opened the chamber door 12 hours later, they found sleeping peacefully on the floor. He woke up, stretched, and asked if breakfast was available. Tried threats. She stood over him with her claws extended, inches from his face, and described in detail what she would do to him if he did not cooperate. She painted pictures of suffering that made her own crew uncomfortable. Listened politely. When she finished, he said, "I appreciate you explaining your position. My answer is still no." She tried promises. She offered him freedom, wealth, safe passage to any system he chose. She told him his cooperation would spare his from the worst of the coming invasion. "That's very generous," said, "but I think I'll pass." By the third day, the crew of the Endless Night had begun to whisper among themselves. Something was wrong with this human. Something was broken inside him. No creature could face the without fear unless something was very, very wrong. Al came to his private quarters with his concerns. The big warrior seemed nervous, which was itself disturbing. Al had personally killed hundreds of enemies in battle. He feared nothing. "Commander," he said, "this human is not natural. Perhaps his species cannot feel fear. Perhaps there is something wrong with their minds." Had considered this possibility. She had ordered her science officers to study everything the Dominion knew about humans. The intelligence reports were extensive. Humans had been observed for decades before the Dominion decided to expand into their territory. The reports made one thing very clear: humans could feel fear. Human literature was filled with stories about fear. Their religions promised safety from the things they feared. Their doctors treated something called anxiety disorders, which made humans feel afraid when there was nothing to be afraid of. They had words for hundreds of different types of fear. They built entire industries around helping people cope with their fears. Humans were afraid of death. They were afraid of pain. They were afraid of the dark, of heights, of deep water, of enclosed spaces. They were afraid of being alone and afraid of being in crowds. They were afraid of things that could hurt them and afraid of things that could not. If anything, humans seemed to fear more than most species, not less. So why was not afraid? On the fourth day, made a decision. She dismissed her guards and entered his cell alone. She needed to understand this creature, and she was beginning to think she would not find answers through normal interrogation. The cell was small and bare, with only a bench and a waste disposal unit. Sat on the bench with his back against the wall. He looked tired but not broken. He looked at her with the same calm curiosity he had shown since the moment of his capture. Lowered herself onto her back legs, bringing her eyes closer to his level. It was an unusual position for her to take with a prisoner. It suggested conversation rather than dominance. "I want to understand you," she said. Raised an eyebrow. "That's a change from wanting to hurt me. I have studied your species. You feel fear. Your people are afraid of many things. Your literature speaks of fear constantly. Your bodies react to danger with the same chemical responses we see in other prey species." "That's all true," agreed. "Then why do you show none of it? I have done everything my people know how to do. I have shown you death. I have shown you pain. I have shown you the complete destruction of worlds. You should be broken by now. You should be begging me for mercy." Was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking carefully about what to say. "Let me ask you something first," he said. "What do you know about Earth, about where humans come from?" Waved a dismissive claw. "You're a small planet, mostly water. You developed intelligence approximately 200,000 years ago. You built civilization. You reached for the stars." "That's the short version," said, "but it leaves out the important part." "And what is the important part?" Smiled that small, strange smile she had seen on the bridge. "Do you know what we call the time before our recorded history? The hundreds of thousands of years before we learned to write things down?" Waited. "We call it prehistory," continued. "And do you know what the defining characteristic of human prehistory was? The thing that shaped everything we became?" "Tell me." Leaned forward slightly. His voice was soft, almost friendly, but something in his eyes had changed. "We were prey, Commander. For 1,000,000 years we were prey. And I think that's something your species has never understood." The cell suddenly felt smaller than it had before. Found herself paying very close attention to every word the human spoke. "Your people evolved as apex predators," continued. "Nothing on your world ever hunted you. Nothing ever ate you. You have never known what it is to be the thing that other things consume." He paused. "Humans know. We have always known. And that changes everything about who we are." Remained still as the human began to speak. She had expected begging by now. She had expected tears and broken promises. Instead, she was getting a history lesson. But something told her to listen. Stood up from his bench and began to pace the small cell. He moved like a teacher in front of a classroom, comfortable and natural. His chains clinked softly as he walked. "Picture Earth 1,000,000 years ago," he said. "Picture my ancestors. They were small, Commander, smaller than modern humans. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. They couldn't run very fast. They couldn't climb very well. Their teeth were flat and useless for fighting. He stopped packing and turned to face her. And everything on our planet wanted to eat them. Tilted her head slightly. Every world has predators. Every species faces challenges. Challenges, yes, agreed. But you don't understand what it was like. We had lions, Commander. Great cats with claws like knives and jaws that could crush skulls. We had wolves that hunted in packs, working together to run down anything that tried to escape. We had bears that could stand 10 feet tall and kill with a single swipe of their paws. He began packing again. We had crocodiles that lived in the water and dragged us under to drown. We had snakes that hid in the grass and killed with poison. We had eagles that came from the sky and snatched our children. Every direction we looked, something was waiting to eat us. Felt her scales shift colors slightly. She was uncomfortable, though she could not say exactly why. Every night we huddled in caves, continued. We built fires because fire kept the predators away. We took turns staying awake because if everyone slept, something would creep in and kill us all. We listened to the sounds outside, growling, howling, the pad of heavy feet, the crack of breaking branches. He stopped in front of her. Imagine that, Commander. Imagine spending every single night knowing that things with teeth and claws are prowling in the darkness, knowing that your caves and your fires are the only things keeping you alive, knowing that any mistake means death. You survived, said. Obviously you survived or you would not be here. We survived, agreed. But survival changes you. A million years of being hunted changes you in ways that nothing else can. He sat back down on the bench and looked at her with those strange, calm eyes. The first thing we learned was that fear is a chemical. It's a signal from your body telling you that danger is present. It makes your heart beat faster. It makes your blood pump harder. It makes you ready to run or fight. He spread his hands. Most prey species never get past this. Fear controls them. When danger appears, they run or they freeze or they die. The fear is in charge. But not humans. Not anymore. We learned, Commander. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we learned that fear is just a tool, a warning signal, useful in short bursts, deadly if you let it control you. Leaned forward. We learned to think while terrified. We learned to plan while being hunted. We learned to look a predator in the eye and calculate instead of panic. Shifted on her back legs. Something about his words was bothering her, like a small stone in a sensitive place. A prey species that does not run, she said slowly. That is unusual. It's more than unusual, said. It's unprecedented. Most prey species, when they face a predator, have two options: run or die. If they can't run fast enough, they become food. Evolution is simple that way. But humans were slow. You said this yourself. We were slow, confirmed. We couldn't outrun lions. We couldn't outclimb leopards. We couldn't outswim crocodiles. If running was our only option, we would have died out long ago. He smiled that smile again, the one that made scales prickle. So we found another option. What option? We stopped running. We stopped being purely prey. We started fighting back. Made a dismissive sound. With what? You had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. No natural weapons, agreed. So we made our own. We picked up rocks. We sharpened sticks. We made tools from bones and stone and anything else we could find. We took the world around us and turned it into weapons. He stood up again, and this time his packing had a different energy. He moved like a predator describing a hunt. The first time a group of my ancestors surrounded a lion with spears and rocks, something changed. The lion was stronger than any single human. It was faster. It had better weapons built into its body. But there were 10 humans and they had tools and they were not afraid. The lion died. The lion died, and then they ate it. went very still. "Do you understand what I'm telling you, Commander?" asked softly. "We didn't just survive being prey. We didn't just escape the things that hunted us. We turned around and started hunting them back." He stopped packing and faced her. "Every creature on our world that tried to eat us, we ate them instead. Lions, wolves, bears, crocodiles. All the apex predators that had spent millions of years hunting everything else. We hunted them. We killed them. We wore their skins and made tools from their bones." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "We became the thing that the predators learned to fear." The cell was very quiet, could hear her own heart's beating. "That's an interesting story," she said finally. "But it was long ago. You evolved past those primitive times. You built civilization. You became soft." Shook his head slowly. "We never became soft, Commander. We just got better at hiding what we really are. And you're about to learn exactly what that means." Commander watched the human carefully. Part of her wanted to dismiss his words as the ramblings of a desperate prisoner, but something in his voice held her attention. Something in his calm, steady eyes made her uneasy. "You say you became predators," she said. "Many species hunt, many species kill. That does not make you special." "You're right," said. "Hunting alone doesn't make us special. What makes us special is how we hunt." He sat down on the bench again, relaxed and comfortable despite the chains on his wrists. "Your intelligence reports told you we were persistence predators, Commander. Did they explain what that means?" Searched her memory. She had seen the term in the files. "It means you pursue prey over long distances. It means we walk prey to death." Something in his voice made Scales shift color again. "Let me describe it for you," continued. "Imagine an antelope on the grasslands of Earth. Fast, beautiful, built for speed. It can run at speeds that would leave a human far behind. If a human tried to chase it, the antelope would be gone in seconds." "Then how did you catch it?" "We didn't chase it, we followed it." Held up a finger. "An antelope can run fast, but it can only run fast for short periods. It runs, it escapes, it stops to rest and catch its breath. It thinks the danger is over." He held up a second finger. "But then on the horizon it sees movement. A figure walking toward it, just walking, not running, not chasing, just coming closer at a steady, patient pace." A third finger. "The antelope runs again. It escapes again. It stops to rest again. And again the figure appears, closer now, still walking, still coming." Lowered his hand and looked directly at. "This goes on for hours, sometimes for days. The antelope runs and runs and runs, but no matter how far it goes, the human keeps coming. Not fast, never fast, just constant, endless, patient." He leaned forward. "Do you know what happens to an animal when it realizes it cannot escape? When no matter how fast it runs, the thing hunting it always appears again. When there is no water or rest or safety anywhere." Did not answer. "Its legs give out first. Muscles burn through all their energy. The animal stumbles, falls, gets up, stumbles again. Then the heart starts to fail. It has been working too hard for too long. The animal begins to stagger like it is drunk." Stood up slowly. "And then it collapses. Not because the human caught it. Not because the human was faster. Because the human simply would not stop. The animal runs itself to death, and the human walks up to it, still breathing normally, still moving steadily, and finishes it with rocks and sharpened sticks." The cell felt very cold, found herself pressing back against the wall without meaning to. "That is what humans are, Commander. We are not the fastest, we are not the strongest, but we never ever stop. Our bodies are designed for it. We can walk for days without rest. We can cross any terrain, survive any weather. We sweat instead of panting so we can cool ourselves without stopping to breathe." He began packing again, and now his movement seemed different. It seemed like the patient, steady walk he had just described. "Do you know what that does to prey? To know that the thing hunting it will never give up, that it can run as far as it wants, hide wherever it chooses, but eventually, always, the hunter will arrive. Stopped in front of her. It breaks their minds, Commander. Long before their bodies give out, their spirits shatter. They lose the ability to think clearly. They make mistakes. They collapse into despair. He smiled. We drove species to extinction this way, not by killing every animal, but by being so terrifying that they could not survive the fear. They knew we were coming. They knew we would never stop. And eventually, they simply gave up. His claws had extended without her noticing. She forced them to retract. "This is ancient history," she said. Her voice was rougher than she intended. "Your species developed technology. You no longer hunt this way." "We don't hunt animals this way anymore," agreed. "But the instinct never left. The patience never went away. When humans want something, Commander, we pursue it with the same endless, steady determination we used on those grasslands a million years ago." He looked at her with eyes that had suddenly grown very, very old. "We pursued knowledge until we understood the universe. We pursued technology until we could build ships to sail between the stars. We pursued medicine until diseases that once killed millions became minor inconveniences." His voice dropped. "And when something threatens us, we pursue it with the same patience, the same determination, the same refusal to ever stop. We walk toward it. We get closer every day, and eventually we catch it." Thought about the Dominion's expansion plans. She thought about the 17 species they had conquered. All of them had either surrendered quickly or fought desperately and lost. None of them had simply waited. None of them had spoken calmly about patience and pursuit. "You are trying to frighten me," she said. "You are trying to use psychology against me as I used it against you." "No," Commander said quietly. "I'm trying to warn you. There is a difference." "Warn me of what?" Looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Your people have never hunted something that hunted back. You have never faced something that would not run. You have never tried to eat something that looked at you and saw food." He stepped closer to her. "You don't know what you've started. You don't know what you've woken up." His voice became very soft. "But you're about to find out." The cell was quiet for a long moment. Commander stood very still, processing everything the human had said. Her scales had gone dark, almost black, a sign of deep unease that she could not control. Sat back down on his bench. His movements were casual, relaxed. He looked like a man who had finished a pleasant conversation and was ready to rest. "You still have not answered my question," said finally. Her voice was harder now, hiding the uncertainty beneath. "Which question?" "Why aren't you scared, human?" Looked up at her. For a moment something flickered in his eyes, something old and deep and very, very dangerous. Then he smiled that gentle, terrible smile. "I was scared, Commander." "Blinked what?" "When your ship surrounded us, I was scared. When your soldiers dragged me from my vessel, I was scared. When you brought me to your bridge and showed me your claws and your teeth, I felt fear." He held up his hand. My heart rate increased. My palms became wet with sweat. My body flooded with chemicals designed to prepare me for danger. I felt every bit of the fear that my ancestors felt in those caves a million years ago. He lowered his hand. "And then I did what my people learned to do across those hundreds of thousands of years of being hunted. I took that fear, and I put it away in a small box in the back of my mind." Stepped closer to him. "You cannot simply ignore fear. No creature can do this." "We don't ignore it," said. "We use it. Fear is information, Commander. It tells you that danger exists. It prepares your body to respond. But it is only useful for a moment. After that, it becomes a problem." He looked at her steadily. "My ancestors learned this in the darkness of their caves. Fear would tell them a lion was outside. That was useful information. But then they had to decide what to do about the lion, and making decisions while terrified is very, very difficult. So, so they learned to separate the fear from the thinking, to feel the fear, to acknowledge it, and then to put it aside so they could plan, to use the information without being controlled by the emotion. Stood up slowly. You showed me you can kill me, Commander. I understood this the moment I saw your ships. The fear that told me I was in danger came and went in seconds. After that, there was nothing new to be afraid of. You were going to threaten me. I knew that. You were going to show me terrible things. I knew that too. He shrugged. The fear did its job. It prepared me. And then I put it away because it was no longer useful. Felt her heart's beating faster. This is not natural. No prey species thinks this way. Prey species that think this way survive, said quietly. The ones that don't become food. 1,000,000 years of natural selection taught my people this lesson. Those who could control their fear lived. Those who could not became meals for things with bigger teeth. He stepped toward her, and this time had to stop herself from stepping back. You asked why I'm not scared. The truth is I finished being scared days ago. Now I'm waiting, calculating, watching. Waiting for what? Smiled. Your intelligence reports. Did they tell you how humans respond when their people are taken? When one of us is captured by an enemy? Felt something cold touch her spine. You expect rescue. We are far from your space. No one knows where you are. Someone always knows, said. We are very careful about keeping track of our people, and when one of us goes missing, we don't send a rescue fleet. We don't try to negotiate. He looked directly into her predator eyes. We follow. The word hung in the air like a warning. Right now, somewhere out there, my people have noticed I'm missing. They are gathering information. They are tracing my ship's last known position. They are calculating where I might have been taken. His voice became soft. And then they will start walking toward you, Commander. Not running. Never running. Just moving steadily, patiently in your direction. They will track your fleet across the void. They will find where you came from. They will learn everything about your dominion. He stepped even closer, close enough that he could smell her carnivore breath. They will never stop, no matter how far you run, no matter where you hide. Every day they will be a little closer. Every week they will know a little more. And one day you will look at your sensors and see them coming, walking toward you across the stars. His claws extended involuntarily. You are trying to frighten me, she said again, but this time her voice was not as steady. I am telling you the truth, said. Your species conquered through terror because you never met anything that had already made peace with being prey. You never hunted something that hunted back. You never tried to devour something that had spent 1,000,000 years learning how to devour its devourers. He was close enough now that she could see flecks of gold in his brown human eyes. We have been scared since before we could speak, Commander. We are fear's oldest students. We have had 1,000,000 years to learn every lesson it can teach. And the final lesson, the one that let us walk out of those caves and start hunting the things that hunted us. He paused. Fear fades, but patience is forever, and we are patient beyond anything your species has ever imagined. Stood frozen, looking down at the small, soft, clawless creature before her. He smiled up at her, gentle and kind and absolutely certain. You still haven't answered my question, he said softly. Not really. What question? Why aren't you scared, Commander? He tilted his head. Because you should be. 3 days later, released the human prisoner. She cited insufficient strategic value. She ordered her fleet to withdraw from the border region and return to Dominion space. When her superiors demanded an explanation, she sent them a single report. It contained everything the human had told her and one final recommendation. Do not hunt humanity. Do not threaten humanity. Do not give humanity a reason to follow us. Because they will come walking out of the void, patient as death itself, and they will never stop. The Dominion quietly removed human space from their expansion plans. They told themselves it was a matter of strategic priorities. They told themselves there were easier targets. They did not tell themselves the truth, that for the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the predators had met something they did not want to hunt. Some prey, they learned, was better left alone. And far across the void, in the darkness between stars, humanity continued watching the Dominion with ancient, patient eyes. Waiting,